Thank you. Good afternoon. I am here to call the Transit Commission to order on Thursday, September 17th. It is 4:26. We had some technical issues besides other issues today, and we have a quorum present. First order is to call meeting to order, which I've done. Public comments is the next. Do we have any public comments? Go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is William Harris. I'm Marathon County Board Supervisor for District 3. One of the initiatives up today is regarding Island Place. I had a chance to meet with a number of the residents. They expressed strong interest in wanting a bus route there. And I was able to write a letter on their behalf. I talked with them about it. And a number of them signed on to the letter expressing interest. And they stated they very much like to ride, and in fact, probably try to work out getting monthly passes. They were super excited about it. So I hope that the committee will take that into consideration, as it would offer them independence and also obviously a much needed ability to get from one place to another, and especially in times like the winter. Also, on another note, another thing that will be brought up regarding Rib Mountain route, it was mentioned that it was tabled. It was actually just in the Health and Human Services Committee, which I'm also on. It just was mistakenly not placed on the agenda last time, but will be on the next agenda, and we will be putting forth a resolution to move that forward as well. So that will be continuing to move forward. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Tom Killian, 133 East Thomas Street, and also alderperson for District 3, in which some of today's proposed changes reside in. And I strongly support these new routes on River Drive, and this is a high priority matter in District 3, and it seems not just from the municipal representation, but at the county level as well, and also taking into account some of the demographic factors with age in this section of the district. And I would say in Wausau in general that we have substantial numbers of senior citizens in the community, and those who are retired or will be retired in the near future. And I think to be an age-friendly city, it's very important that we have uniformly accessible routes for our residents, and that for residents on Island Place to have the ability to partake in necessary and desired services via public transit. This would really be necessary. And I think just looking at it from a broader perspective, if we're going to have strategies for our citizens that allow more opportunities through transit, then we really, I think, cannot get from point A to point B strategically until we can let our residents get from point A to point B geographically. So I hope there's strong support from the Commission for these changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Pat.
With the two speakers' permission, I'm wondering if we could take their remarks and include them in the public hearing portion, or would they have to say those things again?
I don't see a reason. I think that it would be definitely included in the public hearing. Thank you.
Very good.
Anyone else or public comment? And you can also wait and talk at public hearing during the number 4 as well, if about the Island Place addition. Okay, seeing none, I have approval of minutes of July 16th, 2020. They're in your packet. If there's any, go ahead, Pat.
I would move to approve with two changes. One is on the bottom of the public comments section, there's Derek Burris mentioned, and he's listed there as making a public comment, but he's not listed in the also present group at the top of the page. So I would ask that that be changed, and in the portion of the minutes where we're talking about the transit service request for Island Place Apartments, I have emailed Greg some suggested 2 or 3, maybe 2 sentences to add, so that in that body of text that we better describe how Route A would change to accommodate a pickup at Island Place, that it would go right on River Drive, down River Drive to stops, including Island Place, left on 4th, and then right on Forest. So if that can be, Greg's got it, so if that could be approved, that'd be great.
Any other comments or concerns? Do we have a second for the minutes? As stated?
Second it with the changes made to the minutes.
Perfect, thank you. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye as well, and that has passed unanimously. Okay, we're now up to the public hearing regarding proposed change to Route A. Any other further public comment about the proposed changes to Route A?
Want me to describe the,
Yeah, I just wanted to see if anybody was out there first. Go ahead.
good afternoon, everyone. Notice for this, am I on?
There you are.
Just testing. Notice for this public hearing was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Let's see. On August 22nd, and notices were subsequently sent to 38 stakeholder groups, locations, including Island Place Apartments. The proposed route includes the addition of a route southbound on River Drive between Washington Street and 4th Street, the addition of a route northbound on 4th Street between River Drive and Forest Street, and the elimination of a route on 1st Street and Forest Street between Washington and 4th Streets. Take it away.
I just want to also make comment about the public comment that was mentioned before from Island Place. That was placed, it was written comment, and it was placed in your packets and will be entered in on the record. Any further discussion from our committee? Seeing nobody else has public comment?
I would like to speak, if that's,
Go ahead.
sure. I would just like to speak out in support of this proposal. And I just think that the point of local government is to provide services for our constituents. And I'd like to commend the residents who spoke up and asked for something. And I think that if it's in our reasonable ability to accommodate people's preferences and the things that help make their lives better, that is incumbent upon us to do that. And so I would like to just express my support for the proposal.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions?
I have a question to Greg. What stops are you going to have on River Drive? Is there going to be one near the Marathon County buildings or just Island Place?
Well, our general standard is every other block and at major trip generators. So if this is approved, we will do an assessment of appropriate locations. We haven't completed that yet. Off the top of my head, I would say at the county complex, at, I forget the name of the facility now, they've changed the name, Opportunity Inc. and Island Place are the three on River Drive, one near Metro Ride on 4th. And it should also be mentioned that the stop currently at the post office would be moved about a half block away from the post office onto the corner, or near the corner of 4th and Forest.
Any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I close this public hearing at this time. Thank you, everyone. Number 5, discussion and possible action on proposed change to Route A. As we can see, we have discussed this with public hearing and with discussion for the last couple of meetings. If there's, do you need anything else, Greg, besides a motion to accept?
If I could just interject a bit in terms of timing,
Is your mic on?
maybe?
Not.
Yes, actually. I just didn't speak into it. What was I going to say? Oh, in terms of timing, we do have a supply of route maps and schedules, and we are in the budget process at this point. I'd prefer not to print public information, change our route map and schedule until we're a little further into the budget process. I would hate to do printing and then have to do another modification for a fare increase or another route modification. So I don't know when you want to set a date for implementation, but I'd just as soon not print new maps now. If you want to implement and just not have public information available for a bit, that works for me too, but
So the two things would not happen at the same time. The route service may begin before you have the printed material out.
yes, we could put information online, for instance, on the website, perhaps, provide a leaflet of sorts to Island Place, but we wouldn't modify the route map and schedule piece until
Yeah.
we've completed the budget process.
I can't imagine that'd be a big problem, if we can make it happen fairly quickly, should do it.
Is that a motion?
Be a motion to pass this measure on to the full city council for approval at their earliest convenience.
I'll
I don't know if we
second.
can Get on next week or not, but
Should, maybe? You could try, I guess. To her.
she's pulling the strings.
Yeah. Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept this proposed change to Route A, which will, of course, go on to council for final approval. We will not have any printed materials until the budget session is over and we know that it is a final
Right.
document. So that will be the only difference. So all in favor say aye.
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 And that passes unanimously, and that will be going to council maybe next week. Discussion?
Could I just ask real quick,
Go.
Greg, after it passes council, how long until it actually starts?
We'd have to modify
to-
some internal materials, operator instructions and that sort of thing.
Couple of
but,
weeks, or-
Yeah, no more than a couple of weeks.
Okay. thank
Sorry,
you.
and what was the length of time of the gap in between when you would have the route change would start and then when the updated public materials would be published?
Well, we generally finish the budget process in November, I believe.
Yeah.
So, once we feel confident that we're not going to have to modify service, then we would print our route map and schedule and make it permanent. Up until then, we could do some
Yeah.
sort of leaflet.
Or we
For
could
Island
do,
Place.
and we will update the website.
Yes.
It's just
Yeah.
the printed maps that aren't going to be.
Yep.
Sure. So just to make sure I understand, that means that within a few weeks, it sounds like the change could start, and then probably sometime after November is when the updated route map would come?
Correct,
Perfect.
correct.
Could that route map be put in the city mayor's newsletter?
Oh, sure.
That would be a good way,
It depends on the timing,
on the timing, if it can.
yeah. I intended to put the notice in the newsletter, but the timing wasn't quite right. So,
We can pop it in the winter newsletter. The fall one got out last Tuesday, so.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, any other questions or concerns? No, moving on. Discussion of possible action on request for installation of concrete pads at bus stops on Grand Avenue.
I don't know if Pat wants to introduce this?
Well, it's kind of coming from our neighborhood association. You have a copy of a letter from Steve Gallagher, who is the lead for the neighborhood association on this. And they have detailed where they would like to put some, have some concrete pads and benches. And we've checked with Public Works, and for the limited number of pads that are being required and the relatively small size, Public Works has offered to do the work for us. So that's great. And I guess I don't know if Steve wants to say anything further.
I'm Steve Gallagher, 316 Reuter Street. I'm one of the members of the leadership group for the Southeast Side neighborhood. We've been wanting to make Grand Avenue a little grander than it's been lately. So we've come up with the idea of putting benches at 4 of the bus stops that are between Sturgeonetti and
Kent?
Kent.
Yeah, that's stretch.
And what we would like to do is, the first one would be right in front of the cemetery, so it would be a memorial to Patty Grimm. We'd have a plaque on the bench. The bench would have a planter next to it. The pads would be about 6 by 9 feet, and they would be flush with the sidewalks. The next one would be at Bernard Street. We'd have another bench there, same design, same items. At Weston, we are asking if we could move the bus stop about a half a block north, because at Weston, the bench would be in front of the Catholic cemetery. Not that we don't like Catholics, but the grass is much higher there, and it's much narrower on their service road, so we can't really fit a pad in there. But if we went and to work with the Catholic diocese in Madison to get this done would be pulling teeth. So we'd like to move the bus stop about a half a block is what it is to the next corner. And that way we can put a pad there, would be right in front of Sun Printing, right across the street from Sun Printing. It's the only changes we are asking. On Broadway, we're not going to put a bench in there. It's just a concrete sidewalk. But on Ross Street, where they're going to have Emmerich is doing the new development, where the Ponderosa was, we think we have him committed to putting the bench in there in front of the new development, which would be great for the residences there. Likewise, on the one in front of the Patty Grimm Memorial Bench with the new development right across the street at Sturgeonetti, the 26 units, that would be perfect spot for them also. We would not shovel them in the winter because most people won't sit on a freezing bench. We will maintain, the southeast side will maintain any flowers planted in the planters. I think that's it.
Greg, what do you think about the one issue, which is the moving of the,
Well, we generally, as I said earlier in the meeting, we like to have our stops on about every other block. In that area, we've got 2 fairly close to one another, and then we have this separation, and that's the one we would move closer to the other 2. We would prefer to leave it as close to where it is, perhaps not the full block, but kind of, split the difference perhaps, depending on where the.
It's a short block.
Yeah,
It's only like half a block,
Yep.
technically.
yeah, my staff and I took a look at it yesterday.
Oh, good.
So, yeah, we're not opposed to this at all. I I did provide our bus stop placement and amenities policy for your review. We adopted that last year. But it's really up to you what you want to do with this. My staff and I have reviewed it, and we're certainly willing to work with the folks involved and make this happen. I do have a question as to cost of the pad. When you say the city will install, does that mean the city will fund as well, or the city will do the work, or?
That was my impression, that it would, a small amount of material, and I don't know how much they have on hand or anything like that, but the Director of Public Works seemed to think that that would not be a problem.
Okay. Yeah, the reason I ask is Metro Ride does not have a source for that offhand. I mean, we could look to our reserve fund or whatever. I just wondered if you had contacted engineering, if they had agreed to that, or?
I didn't talk to engineering, I talked to Eric.
Oh, yeah, Eric. Yeah, I had emailed Eric last week or so looking for just a ballpark estimate on cost, and he has not contacted me, so I don't know what it would be.
So I think the motion would be to ask the transit director to work with Public Works and any other city department necessary to execute this plan, and if they can get the pads in yet this fall, that'd be great. But
Good question. Will these pads and benches meet the ADA requirements for people with disabilities?
I don't know the rules, but I believe they would, because the paths would be flush with the sidewalk. The bench would sit just beyond the edge of the sidewalk. So I don't see any issue whatsoever. They're level, they're flat.
yeah, if there was a step involved or something, you might have a problem.
That's why we need to try to move that one stop, because it would be a step
Yeah.
and would be very confined.
Yeah, we've really not been involved in the placement of amenities in a very long time. So our shelters are not currently ADA accessible, which is why we proposed to replace them. But benches is a whole new horizon for us. But I suspect we'll be working with engineering to do that right.
And then what we're going to do is we do fundraisers for the benches, and anybody that wants to sponsor one would have a plaque on it or on the planter. And we're just going to raise our money through the Southeast Side neighborhood.
We have
That'd be a
we have a motion. Did you get, was that a motion?
That would be a motion, yeah.
Okay.
That's acceptable to the chair.
Do we want to narrow the focus of funding for the installation, that, it's contingent on DPW agreeing to funding that?
I would assume that Greg would work, with Public Works to figure this out, and if they, I don't know if they would need, that they would not $100 or something for materials or something,
Yeah.
get back to me or get back to Mr. Gallagher or whatever, just kind of finesse the thing and make it happen.
Yeah, I think we'll have to nail down cost first.
Yeah,
And then
we have to.
see what resources are available. It may have to go to finance, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what kind of.
Okay, yeah, if they can do it with materials on hand without causing any problems, that'd be great.
Okay, I'm looking for a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, motion and a second on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, myself, and that passes. Number 7, discussion and possible action on financial report.
In your packet, I have provided you 3 exhibits. The first is the year-to-date revenue and expense statement. This is through July 31st of this year. So through 58% of the year, our total expenses are at about 50%, so we are under budget. Revenues, on the other hand, are at about 31%, and that has to do with the fact that we have suspended fare collection. We did that in mid-June, and we took action to suspend them through the end of the year. The one item of note on this statement is, from my perspective, is a little more than halfway down, is the CARES Act funds. So we received a grant for $3.2 million, and it can be used for reducing the local share of the cost of public transit, among other things. And so I can apply those funds for expenses incurred after January 20th. And so the second page of this exhibit shows you how I've applied them in my operating budget for 2021. So I've made some assumptions for 2020. And the assumption we're making is that we're going to reduce the city's commitment from over $1 million to about $173,000. And so what that will do is put over $1 million in our reserve fund. And it's important to note that because I'm going to bring that up when we talk about the bus budget later in the agenda. But we are also going to apply those funds in diminishing amounts for 2021 and 2022. The real challenge with these funds in terms of using them for our operating budget is eventually the expenses we incur in operating have got to go back on the levy. And so if we use CARES funds for one-time costs, for continuing costs, we have to somehow figure out where we're going to find the money to replace CARES funds. And so that's why I've cautioned one-time funds for operating uses are not a great idea. In the case of 2020, we are home free as far as levy limits. Our budget is set, the levy is set, and so if we can reduce our burden on the levy this year, there is no penalty to that. And that's why I've advocated to Marianne and the mayor that we claim as much money as we can and get it into our reserve account, and so that's what we're going to do. For 2021, we're not certain what's going to happen with ridership and revenue. CARES funds will make up for the lost revenue by being applied as a contra expense. So we're able to reduce our overall expense to the extent that we're losing revenue, so it'll cancel each other out. So I'm looking to use $450,000 next year, $350,000 in 2022. The third exhibit is kind of a summary of what I've just described. Oh, I got my lines wrong. $425,000 in 2021 and $350,000 in 2022. That leaves us with a remaining balance of $1.4, almost $1.5 million. And I'm working with IT on identifying capital projects, real-time customer information sort of stuff, fare collection. We're talking about possible solutions to spend capital money on getting at that real-time customer information issue. But we've also got several capital projects in our capital plan that we've struggled to find money for, and we'd like to move some of those projects onto the forefront. And so I will be bringing that stuff forward in the coming months. In the last number of months, we have been trying to figure out what to do with the CARES funds, honestly. I've had numerous conversations with peers, and we're all kind of in the same boat, trying to figure it out, and uncertain as to, what does the future look like? How much should be used for operating? Is this going to be a long-term thing? And so we've applied for CARES funds to be used almost entirely for operating assistance for now. We are going to use them to buy the driver barriers. Those are being installed as we speak. But we'll still have a big chunk of money there to be used for whatever we identify and whatever you approve in the future. So although we did apply for operating assistance almost entirely, my intent is to amend that grant and identify the capital needs that we want to pursue. So that will be coming your way. The 2021 budget, I have to say, was the most difficult I've ever done, just because of the uncertainty. The caveat there is that CARES funds kind of cures all at this point. You know, if I'm off, I mean, I tried awful hard to be accurate in my projections for 2020, but ultimately, if we're off, we've got CARES funds to you know, fill in. Revenue for this year is certain. We're not collecting anymore, so we know what it is already. But it's the expense amount that we're not sure about. In terms of expenses for the rest of the year, whether or not the school year decides, you know, in-person school is going to happen or not is kind of a big deal. And how we use our labor is going to be a big deal. We budgeted operating transit service for the school year. So we've got that labor on hand. We're in the hiring process, and it's my intent to keep those folks busy and on the payroll so we don't lose them. And so we may come forward in the coming months with a administrative leave proposal, platooning, for instance. I just want to give you a heads up on that. Like I said, we just recruited. We are in the training process. This is probably the most successful recruitment we've had in I can't remember how long. And here we are, you know, debating what we're going to do with folks. So stay tuned. We may have some proposals for you to consider. I think that's all I have in terms of the financial. Are there any questions?
A question on the 3.2 million, did they ask all the transit systems in the state to ballpark what you thought you'd need, or would they use some formula and just say, here you go, Greg, we got 3.2 million for you?
Well, they didn't ask us at all. So each year, the Wisconsin DOT distributes operating assistance to transit systems. They administer both state and federal transit operating assistance. And the statute says it's distributed on an evenly among systems of similar size. So they merely took the percentages that were applied for this year for normal operating assistance and applied the same percentages to the CARES funds. Now, it's great for smaller systems like us because we get a good chunk of our budget is covered by state operating assistance, or federal operating assistance, I mean. Larger systems like Madison and Milwaukee don't get nearly as much federal assistance, and so their percentage of the pot is pretty small. So the CARES funds are not helping those larger systems nearly as much. You know, I almost fell off my chair when they said we were going to get $3.2 million. It involved none of our input, and it was a complete surprise, but certainly a welcome one. As I said in my memo, you know, our budget would be a shambles were it not for that $3.2 million. And so it's just odd being in a circumstance where financially this is scary stuff, and we have this backstop. So I hope to use it wisely.
And so none of the CARES money will be used for vehicle purchases, or at least buses. The buses are coming out of that VW settlement money.
Correct, indirectly. So my plan is to build the reserve fund this year, and then when the buses arrive 12 months from now, we would use reserve funds. But by now, they're not federal funds anymore, they're in our reserve account. And that makes the procurement a lot easier. And so indirectly, yes, CARES funds that have flowed through our reserve account will be used. Were it not for, that transfer into the reserve account, we would be looking to do some different things on this bus procurement.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You mentioned upgrading bus shelters to meet ADA specifications. Is that already a funded project?
Yes.
Okay, so that's not on the table for
No.
using CARES Act money for? Okay.
Yeah, we receive funds through Section 8521 of the state statute, which is funding for elderly and disabled transportation. Those flow through the county. The county has not been able to spend all of them, and so they're now able to use those for capital projects, and we've identified the shelters as a project that can be funded, so they've awarded that.
Any other questions on the financial report in front of you? If not, we'll just put that on file, right, Greg?
Yes.
Okay, discussion and possible action on COVID-19 protocols.
So COVID-19 is still around, and we are anticipating the start of the school year. At a prior meeting, we established that we would reevaluate our capacity limits in anticipation of the possible start of in-person classes in the fall. And here we are. So, since the middle of June, when we implemented our capacity limit, we have installed hand sanitizers on every bus, hand sanitizer dispensers that are available to everyone. As I said, we are installing driver barriers, and we should have them all installed by the end of this week. And the governor has been so kind as to implement a mask mandate. And so, in my mind, those are the trifecta of COVID protection as we know it. And it raises the question, do we now have a situation where we've implemented certain protocols that would allow us to increase that capacity and accommodate more folks? I did have a Zoom meeting today with the school district and private principals, and I brought them up to speed and said we would be meeting. The district would, I think, very much like for us to do more if we can. I did provide, for your information, an informal poll I did yesterday. I handed that out before the meeting. I asked transit systems throughout the state, what is your current capacity limit, if you have one, or if you don't have one, please indicate, and offer any comments you'd like. And I would say my first impression of the survey is that there is no direct guidance from above. We're all kind of left to come up with our own solution, I guess. And so there are systems that have followed the CDC guideline, which is where we're at. 6-foot social distancing, that leaves us with 10 passengers. Some have gone to 50%. Some have said that because they've added the hand sanitizer dispensers and the driver barriers, they feel comfortable doing that. But I also have to tell you, there are a couple systems that have not had capacity limits since day one. Janesville, Oshkosh, they put up clear shower curtains and continued to collect fares and have not had capacity limits. So they are certainly not the norm, but that's what has been going on. There are also a couple systems that have now moved from capacity constraints to not having any limits. Lacrosse, for instance, Stevens Point. So there are a number of systems who have opened it up. My thinking on the matter, I'm not here to make a recommendation. It's on the agenda because we discussed it previously and wanted it reevaluated. One school of thought is that, we've made it as safe as we can. That people can go to any number of places, including the grocery store, restaurants, and there are no capacity limits. Why are we any different? Well, the one difference I would point out is that this is a confined space. But, you could take the tack that we've made it as safe as possible and parents can decide whether it's safe or not. It's an interesting argument, but I would argue that those who have no other means really have no other choice. So this isn't really a choice at all for a certain demographic. In my opinion, anything over 10 is beyond the social distancing CDC guideline. And I don't know how to substantiate a number higher than 10, whether it's 50% or it's 20 or it's, I don't know. I don't know what the basis for a number would be. Other than looking at what others have done, it's really kind of the only guidance that's out there. And it's all over the map. So.
I have a question. If the mask mandate goes away statewide, is the citywide mask mandate cover buses?
We're talking about in our public facilities?
Correct.
Yes, we could cover buses. I know we've had some questions, but that is something we could do and probably should consider.
That
Yeah.
is one caveat I would add, that absent a mask mandate of some sort, any more than 10 is, I think, out of the question.
If we board a bus today, what do we see? Are half the seats taped off? Or do you just say,
No, the driver just announces over the PA, there are signs, and then if people are too close, drivers intervene over the PA and ask them to spread out.
Okay.
In terms of loads, we are monitoring them. Drivers are monitoring, and when they get close to the 10, they notify us, so that if we have a resource available, we can send out another bus. I don't think we've denied service to anyone at this point. We've gotten close to the limit a number of times. And in talking with other transit systems, that's kind of how it's been everywhere. The fact that there aren't as many destinations to go to, there aren't as many people working in person, there's just less travel. And so, although we've placed limits on capacity, it's pretty much taken care of itself. Some transit directors I've talked to used ish, we're at 10-ish. We use a little flexibility at times because we don't want to strand people. So, we've tried to use a little common sense as well.
what's the duration of the average ride? 5 minutes? 7 minutes?
Well, it depends, yeah, it really
Get
depends.
on and get off. People come and go on the bus.
Right, but on average, how many, if, a random person gets on the bus, are they on there 10 minutes?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I mean, it is so varied. One of the things I find most remarkable is the people who will flow through a bus in a single trip outbound. People getting on, people getting off. It's not like they all get on at the same place and they all get off at the same place. People get on outbound, people get on inbound. Like Kathy said, it kind of depends where you get on. And, we try to design routes so that you can cross the street and go in the other direction. And so it shortens your trip. But there are some routes where that's not an opportunity. And so on those routes, the trip is a little longer. So, do we have a number? No, we don't calculate a number. And it also depends whether you transfer. I mean, if you're going to use 2 buses, obviously it's a longer trip.
If the school district kicks into in-person attendance in October, you're going to need a decision or some guidance from us, right?
Well, I mean, you could take no action, and we're at 10. And we'll have to figure out what that looks like. You know, that's the other part of this. Because we have a 10 limit, we could very easily on the southeast side get 6 blocks and be full. And then we're denying a ride to everyone else on the rest of the route. Now, you know, we've polled employees on their availability because half of our part-time operators have other job commitments. And can they work longer? Well, you know, if you do the math, how long is it going to take to get those kids to school, get back? You know, are the kids still going to be there?
Yeah,
We also don't know how many kids we're really talking about.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a crapshoot.
In our call this afternoon, first student was a participant, and they know who the kids are. They have their names and their addresses, they know who are family members and how they can group them. They assign them seats. We don't know, I mean, we're public transportation, we don't identify who our passengers are. We don't know from day to day. We don't assign seats, we don't, you know. So day one will be a learning experience, and it will probably be different than the, you know, subsequent days. You know, I do know that if the number, our capacity number is higher, we're probably gonna inconvenience less people in terms of not picking them up. But, you know, once they move forward, and my staff and I know what the capacity limit is, we will start gaming basically what that looks like. How do drivers react when they hit capacity? Do they go from corner to corner where kids are standing and say, sorry, we're full, which will, of course, delay them and take longer to make that round trip? Or do we just close the doors and go? We haven't decided that yet. But we don't know how many we're talking about either. The other complication is that, you know, we have transfer activity downtown. And so we may be fine in the neighborhood and then get downtown and we have too many wanting to get to the school from our transfer point. So there are a whole lot of questions and not many answers.
Have you talked to your drivers at all? I mean, what are their feelings? The drivers?
We've had, we haven't talked specifically about capacity. You know, we've talked about, we've basically done scenarios, talked through scenarios on the current limit and how they should handle it. And we've had a series of meetings on COVID protocols, including that. We haven't talked about raising the limit yet. We've had a prototype of the driver barrier, and they, I think, love it. They like the extra protection. We will have to decide whether or not we still require a mask if, you know, the barrier is installed in place. But for now, they're just, I think, very pleased that there's another level of protection for them.
What does the local health department say about the number on the bus being a confined space? I mean,
I contacted the health department yesterday, and they referred me to direction from a printed piece from the Department of Public Instruction. And it deals with yellow bus student transportation. And it's really not terribly pertinent to what we're doing. You know, identifying students and grouping them by family. I mean, yes, they have the capability of doing it, we don't. Sending a bus monitor, you know, that's not something that we would likely do. You know, adding extra buses or extra frequency, well, that'd be great if we had extra buses and extra people. So I just didn't find the directive to be very helpful. The CDC did put out a piece specifically for transit in the Trump administration's push to reopen the economy. And it includes the guidance that we're currently following. 6-foot distancing, maximum of 10. Now, the question is, did that guidance, was that a stepping stone to something else, to greater capacity? Let's start with this and move toward, opening. I can't help but be watching the infection rates currently. While we're having this conversation, they're higher now than when we implemented it. So I honestly don't know what the answer is. And I don't know that there is an answer. I think the school district is meeting in a couple weeks, and they're going to have another discussion about in-person classes. The soonest they would do that, my understanding is October 15th.
Sorry, if I may, how many students typically are on a bus on these express routes? 30?
I've been on the express route from Wausau East when I volunteer at Colonial, and there was no room to sit. So sometimes it's packed, but not every trip.
How many seats are there?
We have room for 32 seated passengers, well, 32 or 31, depending on the seat configuration. We have two different ones.
So you hit 30,
Yeah.
okay.
Now, as Kathy said, we do have standing loads. And it's not just on the buses we add, the express routes we add during the school year. We have some regular routes, like the one going to Wausau West, where we not only have a full one on the regular route, we add a second one. And so, our goal is to address the needs of the school on our regular routes. And when we can't do that, we add express routes to supplement them. So, you have to consider this, the capacity issue, as an issue on all of our service, not just on, the routes we had during the school year.
So if COVID never came on us, if we were not blessed with that disease, we would typically have loads 3 and 4 times as large as we're allowing now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say more. Yeah, I mean, we have some pretty, it's not unusual that we get complaints from parents that, their child doesn't get a seat. So,
Yes. I was on one where the loop included Wausau West when school was getting out, and I'm pretty sure there were 40 people on that one too, so.
yep. And it varies. It's not necessarily the same, every day. Depends on what's going on at school. That's particularly true at West, where they have a more open schedule and kids can come and go.
Well, any other questions? I mean, I know that the school district wants guidance, from us, because that's part of their decision-making as well. How do we get our kids to school, correct? Does anybody have any desire to change this from 15 with the hand sanitizer and the barriers and and potentially a mask mandate from the city because it's city property, which would supersede any state mandate that goes away? I don't see anybody.
I hate decisions where there's no right answer.
No,
It's like a trick question.
it is. I mean, I'm struggling with this because kids need to get to school too. And if I guess what I'm seeing is if they're tasked by the school board and the administration to get to school, we say, well, tough luck, Cookie. I have a little bit of problem with that. I do.
Well, and the reason I wanted to have this discussion now before final decisions are made, to go back to school is because this is going to be an issue on day one. And I want to be prepared for it. And so, the time is now.
I could, I think I would be comfortable with the student loads, maybe 15 on a bus, but I don't know beyond that. And that would still, you'd have a mix of students and your regular adult passengers, so we want to be fair to everybody and not put anybody in danger.
I guess I'll just ask this question. It's something we've been asking ourselves, both Lance at the county and me. What's the information you need to be able to get there? What information do you need from the health department? And to me, it feels like we need, we understand the recommendation from the CDC. Clearly, we can't meet it beyond 10. But is there a way to have more people the safest way possible? And at what point is that comfort level? I feel like there is a way to be safer on this bus, and I think putting that criteria in, I think the masking is critical. And, maybe we talk about the household. You can sit next to your brother or sister or whoever you live with, but maybe not your best friend. So I think maybe thinking about it in those terms, and then approaching the health department again with that plan and kind of talking through that. We know that they're not going to make the policy for you or us, like we have to do that. But what are those things that we can put into place to make it the safest experience possible for the most kids? I mean, they are going to go back to school at some point. It's going to happen, so.
I totally agree. I mean, we can't just say, I am really, I want everybody to be safe, and I want to do it the best way possible, but I can't say, well, it's just not safe, and it's not safe for kids to not get to school either when they're tasked to get to school. We have, we have chosen in the past that would be part of our, part of our work, and, that's just something that needs to happen. So, Greg, is there, we have the barriers being put in now. We have the hand sanitizer, mask mandate, I think, whatever that we can do to make sure that no matter what happens in other areas of be it the state or a county, that we make sure, because it's city property, that we keep people safe. Is there another number, even with that you feel that we need to stay below?
I honestly don't know. I'm torn, not providing the ride is damaging as well, as you've said. And, in terms of what more can we do to make it safe? I honestly don't know. The one thing I didn't mention is we have disinfectant sprayers in. We've got 2 sprayers and 2 foggers, and we've dramatically reduced the labor necessary to disinfect on a daily basis. So that's good news. The reason that's important is because the labor we now use, or we had been using to wipe everything down, those folks will be driving. And so we needed to reduce the labor hours that we spent, and we've largely done that. We've also have in the pipeline, we're in the hiring process for a utility worker, and that will help us turn them around on a daily basis. We're working on a rotation. How can we, keep them in a rotation to make sure that they're disinfected every day. So, we're doing, I think, all that we can. I don't know that there's anything available that can make this safer. It's really a matter of what we're comfortable with. Is the space, should the space just be available and people decide what's safe for themselves or for their kids? Or should we be more proactive and say, no, 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 6 feet social distancing is a priority, and that's what we're going to do? Or is it less than that? Is it somewhere in between? I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer. It's a matter of what we're comfortable with.
One thought would be that we could have, say, schools reopen and the students are, who, at least the ones whose families are willing to go that route, the schools are open, students are in school. We have a rule that only 10 people on a bus, and so we're requiring the 4 or 5 students that can get on the bus with the regular passengers to maintain 6-foot social distance on the bus, and then they get into school and everything's off. I don't know what their experience is going to be and what their exposure is going to be in school. It's a different audience, but I guess it would be kind of senseless for us to have I think these are fairly strict and prudent guidelines that we have now, but to stick with them and then the student walks out of the bus and into the school and is jostling with classmates and sitting 3 feet from the other students and stuff like that. So I guess it should be kind of a complementary spacing and a crowding thing to what they're going to experience in the school building. And we don't know what the heck that's going to be.
Well, I've been in a few meetings with the district, and one of the significant obstacles for the district is transportation. They're working on protocols to separate kids, to keep them safe, all of that in the school environment. It's getting them there that's the big obstacle that they're having a tough time with, because it's a confined space, and it all has to happen all at the same time. And so, we are an obstacle for them. And the lower the number, the bigger the obstacle. And, there's going to be a public reaction to whatever we do here. If the limit is 10 and we deny service, to half the kids that want to get to school that morning, our phone is certainly going to ring. On the other hand, if we have no limits and everybody's accommodated, the phone might ring later because, from the health department, doing contact tracing. So, I don't know.
That could happen with 10.
What's that?
That could happen with 10
Yes,
people.
you're right.
So-
You're right.
So I think, here's my, again, yes, it's a danger, but what's the alternative? We're the only crew in town. And what's the alternative? I mean,
Right.
is it safer for them trying to get to school by themselves? Is that a better thing? I don't know. I mean, people have the right, if people are worried, they have the right to try to find a different way to school. They certainly have the ability to try to do that. And that's what I'm hoping is going to happen, is that it won't be nose to glass, with people, deciding they're going to do rides, or they're going to, carpool in smaller people that they know, whatever. But, I just keep coming back to, we need to do everything we can, but to say, I just cannot, and I never could see waving at kids at a bus stop, and we're coming upon winter.
Well, and that's the other question. Is there some liability if we pass up kids, strand them? That's a debate we've had for years. If we, didn't fulfill our obligation and we, pass up some child and their parents are both gone to work and they go home to an empty house, is there a level of responsibility on our half? And we take that very seriously. This is really no different. This would be by design. And so, again, I don't know what the answer is. As a transit system, we will implement whatever you decide.
Would it be correct in your estimation that the school district would like by the end of the month to know what we're going to have for capacity on our buses?
I would think so. I mean, they're going to have another discussion about this, I think, the last week, 2 weeks from, I guess it's the last week of September. I don't recall the actual meeting date, 28th, yeah. And so I would expect that they would be pleased to, get additional information prior to that meeting.
Okay, then my best shot, go ahead.
I just have a question. I don't have kids, so I'm not up on the school stuff, but is it all going to be all in person or some in person, some virtual? We don't know.
Isn't that the $1,000,000 question?
That is,
Yeah.
that is.
Oh, this just tears at my heart because I ride the bus and I don't, I don't want to leave a kid stranded either, but I don't want these kids to get COVID or other people and the liability issue. There's no easy answer, that's
Yeah.
all I gotta say. It's
I
just-
wonder if our best shot would be to ask the transit director to continue to work with the health department and the school district, and for us to have a special meeting in 2 weeks to issue some kind of a guideline. And that way, our conundrum here can be aired in the public, and there can be more discussion about it. We can get some feedback on how parents feel, perhaps, and then meet in 2 weeks, and it can be fish or cut bait time.
And we can have some discussions with our employees as well, our bus operators
good.
specifically.
I would feel, as a person on the transit commission and a bus rider, and I ride the bus where the kids go to school, I would feel more comfortable with a special meeting and having recommendations from the health department, the input from the bus drivers and parents before we make that decision.
Got that as a motion?
I'd like to make some comments, if you don't mind, Pat. I'm sorry, I was at the Historic Commission
The
meeting.
chair, so go for it.
Okay. I had heard a few weeks ago that Stevens Point was allowing busing with one occupant per seat. I don't know if there's any data on how that's working out. But also with federal funds available through the COVID, is there a possibility that we could have a staff person or I guess a temp that would be hired, that would be on the bus route to do cleaning in between, and on a constant basis, like with the election, that when someone was using the election cart, it was immediately cleaned up afterwards so that it was sanitized. And then potentially also checking the temperature, because it just seems that it would be helpful to know if we are dealing with someone with a temperature that's coming on the bus, though I don't know how we would handle that. But I agree with the health department information on that and seeing where we can go on that. The other issue with the recent school board is, I do think that they're looking at the K through 4 or 5 and the needs of having those children in school so they don't fall farther behind, and having those teachers available, and that the school board may decide on something different for those in high school, because they may be able to do better with their laptop and that, but then some may need that additional attention, so. But I just think we should try to take advantage of other staffing if we can to somehow sanitize the bus, and having a part-time person on there constantly sanitizing the bus. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion, but I just want to clarify the motion. It's a special meeting in 2 weeks, so we're going to do this after the school board meeting? Is that your intention?
I guess the best thing would be, is to schedule our meeting immediately prior to the last school board meeting of this month, and if we can pull that off. Even, I mean, if they're meeting at 6:30, we could meet at 4:30.
Yeah.
If they're meeting at 6:30 on day X.
Oh, you're not talking the same day?
No, I am, if they're meeting at 6:30 PM and we met at 4 or 4:30, we could get them our decision and they would have it on the agenda.
I mean, what if we were to add or propose that this discussion be added to the actual agenda of the existing meeting rather than a
Of their
separate
meeting?
meeting?
Of their meeting?
Correct.
Yeah, I think they will.
I don't understand.
Yeah, I was confused. I thought you wanted to hear the decision of the school board going back to school or not, and then you would decide on the buses. You're saying you want to decide on the buses before the school board meeting.
I think that would be a courtesy to them and make things, it would be the most practical way to handle it. So my motion would be to ask the transit director to work with continue to work with the school district and the health department and any other expert sources that he could find, and that we schedule a meeting of this body for very shortly before the school board's last meeting of the month, whenever that is. And we are prepared at that time to tell the school district what we are looking at as in terms of capacity on buses.
Okay.
So you're proposing a meeting on the 28th of September? I just have to make sure what else is on that meeting. I mean, that date, I got to look at the calendar. I'm getting a thumbs up back there, so I better look at that.
So my motion would be that, wouldn't have to be on the 28th.
Yeah, let's look
But
and
it would
see.
be at
In
the,
advance of that.
at a time convenient for all of us, workable time
Oh, that's another
prior to, as close as we can get to their Monday, the 28th meeting. Maybe it would have to be Friday, I don't know, Thursday,
See.
Sunday.
No public transit, so I can't get here on a Sunday.
He's kidding. Okay, all right. Let's see. We have, the 21st is busy, the 22nd is can't. So far, I mean, what we have, it looks like the 28th has, I don't know what time that is. We have I don't know where it is. We have a meeting on the 20th at 4:30 in the chambers. So, already scheduled. So that day is out. We're gonna have to look at the next week, the Wednesday, Thursday, Wednesday or Thursday, I'm not doing Friday.
If we had it, we could have a meeting elsewhere, we don't have to have it in this room, do we?
Well,
Do you want it to be recorded or?
do you really want this about buses not recorded in public?
Well, we're talking what's ideal, and where the other thing is what's practical, what we can pull off here, so.
I would think having it recorded would be appropriate. It's just such a hot issue and an important issue.
So,
What have we got
we're looking, I guess, at
on the
the,
28th, we have Citizens Advisory Committee.
from 4:30 to 6:30, it says, yes.
Is that CDBG or what is that?
I don't know.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, Michelle, didn't agree.
Could we meet at 3:30?
I can't, but that's
You
okay.
can't?
If everybody else can, I have work, so,
Could we meet at 6?
Kathy wouldn't be able to get home.
Meet at 6 if someone was willing to give me a ride home. Unless it's nice, I will walk, but
I'll give you a ride.
Okay, I'm sorry, so with the school
yeah,
board,
but then the school board's meeting at 6:30.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So
Thank
we're-
you for that.
I think, to be honest, I think that we should give the school board more than an hour to digest this. I think if we're going to do this, we do it next week.
Okay.
I do. Just my own personal opinion, I'm only one vote, but I think trying to get this skimmed in, hours before they are going to meet, I would rather have the decision made where they can process and the administration can process the decision and give some accurate information to them to make a final decision.
Okay.
what if they don't like our decision and they come back with a different recommendation? Do we change what we proposed?
I don't know. I'm looking at the city's calendar, and there's no meetings on the 23rd or the 24th or the 25th, so we could,
Kathy and I have a 3:30 County Transportation Committee meeting on the 23rd.
should go for the 24th.
Works for me. 4:15?
Okay. Why don't you give that as a proposal or as a motion?
I
Thank
would
you.
move that this body ask the transit director to continue to work with the people involved, health department, school district, any other expert sources he may have through his transit associations or whatever, and that we attempt to get the word out to the public that we are wrestling with this issue, and that we feel that we would like to make a recommendation. It's gonna- another record-long motion, but we want to make a recommendation to the school district, so I would move that we meet to do that at 4:15 PM on Thursday, September 24th.
I'm sorry, so were we hoping that the school board would also be present for this meeting? No, this would just be another meeting of this body only in a
If they
week's
want to
time?
send a representative to help us with our deliberations, I'm sure that
Yeah.
would be welcome.
They could.
But they're going to be, their body will be meeting on the following Monday.
Why couldn't we send a representative to their meeting, I guess?
Without a decision?
And then decide, because the way I see it is that the ball is almost in their court of like, are we going back to school or not?
When they pull the trigger, they want to know
No. Right.
I see.
how many, if we're going to be able to, the kids are going to get there, so
Yeah.
kind
I
of
see.
the onus is on
Personally,
us.
I think that we are one of their obstacles.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what we decide is going to inform their decision.
I see.
And so I would prefer to make a decision
Before.
based on our needs and input from the health department, and then let them know in advance of their meeting what our intent is.
Thank you.
And that might inform their decision.
Okay, and so the point of postponing, I'm sorry, I just want to be clear. So the point of postponing or creating another meeting next week would be to allow for consultation with the health department.
I think Greg if I can respond. I think Greg may be able to learn a little bit more, maybe be a little more comfortable. I don't know if he's going to have a recommendation for us, but the community, I think, needs to know that we are up against it on this issue, and that we are going to be, if the meeting will be open like this one is, people can comment to us as members of the Transit Commission. They can, communicate to the director and be heard with their opinions on it, whether they're comfortable or not putting their kids on the bus.
Greg, would any decision have to go through council?
Well, that's something my staff and I discussed earlier today. I think the COVID protocols that are currently in place were enacted by the council, and one of those is to follow CDC guidelines, which is what we're doing. So if we're going to do,
Any change?
yeah, if we're going to do less than that, I guess my question is the same as yours. Does the council need to
Weigh in?
make that change?
We can look into the authority of this. Seems like probably it should, but we can look into
Or
it.
should this just be referred to public health and safety or whoever? I mean, if it's going to have to go, through the structure anyway and ultimately to the council, I don't know. Maybe that would be the swiftest way, is just to refer it.
Public health and safety meets the
Next
next
week.
Monday?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could make her do that. Put an addendum on that. I mean, that's what we did with pools. Maybe to be clear and to be,
Seems like we're starting the discussion from scratch again, though.
well, my feeling is we have to have something backing up our decision-making, and I don't know if I'm struggling with that right now. We're talking about COVID protocols. We've talked, the health department isn't going to come and tell you what to do. I mean, Greg has tried that. So we're grasping, and I don't know. I mean, I just want to make sure that, I don't know, does this transit commission, and here's the question, feel comfortable making this decision by themselves? Because I don't know with COVID if it doesn't have to go through council anyway. And Greg kind of agrees that he's wondering that too.
Yeah. I can talk more with the health department. I was not satisfied. I mean, I guess I too was looking for them to say, here's what you need to do. And you're right, they're not going to do that, so that was an unrealistic expectation. The guidance they did refer me to, we're already doing. And so I don't know I'm going to get any more from the health department. I could ask, if we were to not have a limit, with these protocols in place, is that safe? Is that unsafe? Is it, and I don't think they're going to answer that question either. I just feel like there is no outside authority kind of guiding us at this point. And, as I said, looking at that exhibit, that seems to be how other systems have, they've just kind of guided themselves, and we've landed in different spots, and I don't think there's data to back it up. It's just what they felt made sense, or what they were comfortable with.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I like the idea of waiting until the 24th, give us a little more time. I think another option would be to ask Public Health and Safety to meet jointly with us on that date and wrestle with it if you want to involve them. I think we've talked about this, and I think we could issue a recommendation, and that way Greg's communication to the school board for the following Monday would be that it's going to be, the final decision will be up to the council, but the committee's recommendation is X.
So Pat, you still want to meet next week?
I think the 24th is a good time to meet. It gives the community a little more time to digest the niceties of this issue. And I would be perfectly fine if the chair and the transit director would like to invite public health and safety if the chair of that committee wants to meet jointly with us on the 24th. I think that'd be fine too. So I would leave some flexibility to it, but I think that the timing is good on that.
I get the feeling that we're kind of all tossing this ball, this hot potato around. And I'm not sure that any more discussion with the health department or with the school board is going to change anything, frankly.
Nope.
So, I mean, that said, we're looking at two options, basically. Either we're going to continue mandating social distancing on buses, or we're not. I guess we don't have to decide that right now, but we could certainly do a recommendation right now. And we have the information that we have. It sounds like Greg has already reached out to the proper authorities who have similarly provided no guidance. And so I guess I would just ask that we vote on a recommendation at this point about whether we want to keep the social distancing in place or not, and then whether the school board wants to take that recommendation to heart in its decision to open schools, knowing how we feel on the matter. It's their decision ultimately whether they want to open schools regardless of what the buses are doing.
Do you want to make a motion either way?
I would like to, I think this is obviously a very political issue, and I think that's why it's so hard, is because you can't decide about buses without deciding about social distancing. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the best we have are CDC guidelines. And we've talked to the health department who have repeated those guidelines. And so my feeling is just those guidelines are in place for a reason. They're one more tool in our toolbox of COVID prevention. And for us to just say, well, it's really hard to accommodate that, I think you lose the whole idea of the guidelines. It's almost like we want these guidelines, except when we have to implement the guideline, right? So my feeling is that there should be 6-foot distancing on buses, and that is the bullet that you have to bite if you want to go back to school. So my motion, therefore, would be to recommend, to vote on a recommendation to uphold the current CDC social distancing guidelines on buses.
Becky, I guess I have a different question, and I'm sorry if it was discussed earlier and then I missed it. I guess my concern is with the COVID, with the buses, the route is under a half an hour. And so I had thought that your exposure around others that could be for a short period of time may not be as a high issue. So have we had other clarification from the health department from that?
No.
And I guess I still would like to see what Stevens Point is doing with allowing one rider in each seat, if there's any.
I don't think
They
there's a
currently
limit.
have no limits.
They don't have any limit. It's in your packet.
Oh, okay, all right. I do think that for our routes compared to bigger cities, we are talking about under a half an hour. And if it's with the mask, and again, I would suggest having some other part-time staff that would be on the bus to be cleaning it constantly. I think we're overthinking how big of an issue it is. It's not like you're sitting in gymnasium or at a special event where you're next to these people, other people, for 4 hours. You're talking about probably 20 to 25 minutes, and if you're wearing masks. So I guess
Thank you.
I can see around allowing others on the buses, or maybe one per bench, if the transit wanted to do that, so to allow for different options.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. I think we have two, actually. Any
Is there a
seconds?
second to either of those motions?
Not yet.
Okay, so that's where we're at.
Yep,
Need a
that's what I
second
said. We have two on the
one of
floor.
motions.
Any seconds? Otherwise, they will die on the floor. Okay? I'm going to pull both motions. I'm going to make a motion to, and I'm going to try this one, that if, to go ahead and take away the, I don't know, what is it, the 15 people or 10 people, to remove the 10-person limit, as long as masks are required, hand sanitizers there, the barriers are in place. And I'm going to put that not to start until when and if school starts. So if school doesn't start, that's a caveat that I would like in that motion.
I would second.
So the capacity limit would stay at 10 until school started, and then if
If
school
school
starts,
starts.
it goes away.
Right.
Question, would that be on all buses or just the express routes?
Go ahead, Greg, I don't think we can.
All of our services open to the general
Yeah,
public.
we
So,
can't.
we can't just say, oh, no, just for kids, because they're all open to the general public. So this would have to be a system-wide policy.
My only opposition to this would be that I think this is a heavy-duty decision, and I think it would be good if we could give the community a little more time to weigh in, but
I think they have.
I'm not quibbling with the quality of the idea.
Totally understood, totally understood. Well, we do have a motion and a second. We're going to take a vote up or down. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
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 Okay, that motion fails 2-3. Yeah. Are we going to make it, what,
I can
we're not making a decision here,
I
and
can do a
so,
modification of that.
okay, go ahead.
I would move that we basically pick up Becky's motion and place the question on the agenda for next Thursday, whether to lift the capacity limits that are currently at 10, to remove those capacity limits if school starts. And that would be the question we would decide after we've heard some feedback from the community. That would be our intention to take that action.
Looking for a second?
Aye. I second.
Thank you. Okay, any discussion on that? Otherwise, we're going to,
I have a question.
go ahead, Greg.
What would the public input process be?
I guess they would have to either input, I guess they could do email, I don't know, I don't,
I have a new fancy online form. I could send the link around to you folks. You can share it, people can email.
they can
either-
come to the meeting.
Yep. I don't know if you want me to make myself available somehow, but I'm willing to help out however I
Yep.
can.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think we can make it clear that the public can contact me, they can contact, all the members of the commission, they can communicate to Greg, they can communicate through the mayor, and we want to hear from people, but I'm a little uncomfortable springing this on the community without a little time to digest it, so.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Can I abstain?
For what reason?
I just don't know what I want to vote, one way or the other. I'm torn.
Well, that's the life of a commissioner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Kathy, what's your vote?
Read the motion again.
The motion is to, again, we are going to reach out to the public for public comment and public interaction, and this question will continue until September 24th, I believe it's 4:15? Is that what it is? We
Yeah.
will reconvene and make a final decision then.
And the question that we're going to be considering is whether to lift the.
Limit.
The limits on how many people can be on the bus if school starts.
I guess yes.
Okay. Well, okay. Okay, that passes 3-2. Or 4, I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4-1. I haven't, it's been a long day. Okay, 4-1. So that's that. Greg, thank you. Number 9, discussion of possible action on bus procurement project.
This item is largely informational. I'm going to be going to Finance Committee to revise my bus procurement budget. So we were awarded a first-round grant through the VW settlement through the state of Wisconsin last fall.
Greg, could you speak up?
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep doing that. We were awarded funds for 4 buses through the first round of the VW settlement through the state of Wisconsin last fall. Unfortunately, we didn't get going on that project until, prior to the COVID outbreak. At that time, factory shut down, and I informed the committee in February that we were going to put this back on the front burner after some staffing challenges over the winter, and then COVID-19 hit. So, long story short, we've worked through WISDOT's procurement process, and as of last week, I got the go-ahead to work with the vendor, Gillig, out of California. In the meantime, we also received notification last week that we were awarded a second round of funding for 3 more buses. Because of the delays, unfortunately, inflation has increased the costs, and so I need to go back to the Finance Committee. But since we have CARES funds, I'd also like to reconsider some of the options on the vehicles that we opted not to include previously. We had decided not to go with our normal transmission, for instance, not to go with windows that open, because we want to buy off the state's contract, and those are that's the standard bus. We decided to do that initially because the first grant instructed us that the funds could be used for the base bus only and no options. And so we were going to either fund those things locally or just opt not to have them. So we threw all kinds of things off of the order. Since COVID-19, we've had a long discussion in the transit industry about airflow in a vehicle. And so we now think that supplemental heaters and windows that open are more important than they used to be, at least our perception of them is. And so we would like to add all of those things back to the procurement. My staff and I met, and we've identified the various options we would like to keep and those we can live without. And so before you is a revised grant summary and bus budget. As Pat asked earlier in the meeting, would we use CARES funds, for this project? And the answer is indirectly. So if we boost our reserve fund in 2020 by paying down the city's share with CARES funds, we will have reserve funds that we can then use to fund this outstanding balance of almost $154,000. But this would get us all 7 buses at the same time within 12 to 14 months. And it would get us the options that we wanted from the beginning, but didn't think we could pay for. So I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to be approaching the Finance Committee and ultimately the council with this proposal.
You don't need any direction from us, you're just going
No, I mean,
Take this
you
to
can,
finance.
you can refer it to finance if you'd like. Otherwise, it's my intent to do that.
I think we should, could support this and ask finance to also support it.
Is that a motion?
I would move to have Greg go to finance with this with our blessing.
I'll second.
Perfect. Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
That will move to finance. Okay, Greg, we're on the last transit director's report.
This shouldn't take me too long. I've provided you narrative on the pilot project. The county has not advanced the proposal at this point, and the proposal is to fund the local share of the cost through the county. They've not yet acted, so the proposal has not advanced. As I noted in the memo, there are some things that I'm going to have to know if we're going to move forward as a transit commission and as a city to support this, and that is, what does this service look like after the pilot? I think the intent of the pilot is to start something. The question is, what's after that? And subsequent to the pilot, the question is, who's going to pay for whatever happens after that? We haven't identified a funder. So even if the county funds the pilot, then what? So I can't put that sort of thing in a grant application until we quantify things, miles, hours, all that. So we'll see if the county brings that brings the money forward. It'll come back to this committee, and you can have that discussion. Bus route through Northern Valley Industries. So ridership, we've been providing a route between our downtown transit center and Northern Valley Industries for many years. I started with the system in 1982, and it was in existence then. It operates 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, 3 trips each day. And we take folks with disabilities there to work. And numbers have been dwindling on the route over the last couple of years, particularly so since COVID. The local share of the cost has been paid by different parties over the years, most recently Inclusa. Unfortunately, not all of the folks on the bus are clients of Inclusa, and so Inclusa started to question whether or not they should be paying for it, and ultimately notified us that they would not pay for anyone except Inclusa clients, which is about 9. So I contacted the executive director at Northern Valley. She was in consultation with Inclusa, and they have found other options for all but one, and concluded that continuing to run the route for just a few people or just the one really made no sense. And so she was in support of discontinuing the route also. So we have no more support for the run, and so the route is intended to discontinue effective October 5th. So, transit service to JoJo's Jungle, unfortunately, I've not made progress on that. The district is not doing anything in person, obviously, and so, you know, they've got no interaction, physical interaction with students at this point anyway. I doubt that we would get anything off the ground until the spring when it warms up again. I have reached out to them, and they've not gotten back to me. So no progress there.
Greg, when you say them, you, school district?
Yes, I
Okay.
contacted the school district
you.
head of special ed. And with regard to the marketing firm, I reached out to Valley Transit in Appleton, and we've played phone tag. For the record, he's it. And I've not made progress on that either. So, you know, we're not, transit systems are really not marketing at this point. You know, we're limiting ridership, so, you know, that's probably not a high priority issue at this point. I would say, though, that for the future, that would be a good use of CARES funds. You know, if we were to decide to enhance our operating budget, to market, to rebuild our service, rebuild our ridership, and we didn't have to sustain that over a long period of time, that would be a good use of CARES funds. So that's certainly not something I've forgotten about, and hopefully I'll have something more for you at the next meeting. Not the very next, but next month. So that's all I have.
Anything further? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Becky, your mic's on. He can't
Oh,
hear
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm tired. I'm sorry. Okay, if nothing else, I take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you. Thank you, Deb. Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.